I want to say some things about artificial intelligence. I've been watching a lot of videos concerning the issue of AI and its implications in the future, where it's at right now, and there is so much misinformation and conjecture that's being passed off as knowledge that it's just ridiculous. That said, there is a lot to be concerned about, simply by virtue of the fact that, well, there's a number of things that we need to remember to begin with. First of all, we do not create things that we do not use. That is especially true with the military. There is no such thing as the weapon that was created that was never used. Every weapon ever created was used. And in more recent times, if a war wasn't happening already somewhere, a war got invented somewhere just to make sure this technology could be used to proof it, make sure it works, iron out the bugs. So the idea that we would create something that we would never use is very erroneous, and anybody that wants to feel that way needs to rethink their position. The second thing is, once we start making something, there is no stopping it. So the idea that we could stop making robots or stop developing artificial intelligence is ludicrous, because it's not going to stop. That's not what humans do. Right? People do not stop something once they've started it. Sure, programs can be canceled, but nobody stopped the airplane from being invented. And once the Wright brothers began building their airplane, nobody told them they had to stop. The same with rocketry. Once rocketry began, nobody told them they couldn't do it. Right? It's the same thing with artificial intelligence. The same thing with robotics. It's already started. It's not going to stop. Now, the next thing I want to cover is the difference between AI and robotics. The way things seem to be presented out here in etherware is that robotics and AI are one and the same thing. They are synonymous, and that is not true. Robotics is the process of building machines that have the ability to operate, I don't know the right word, separately from us. We don't have to physically control every aspect of the machine in order for it to do what we intended for it to do. And that's what robotics is. And robotics can exist from the level of something the size of a nanobot to something the size of an aircraft or even a ship. Right? The idea of autonomous cars that can drive themselves, or they, as they're calling them right now, self-driving cars. That is robotics. Right? Now, the ability to drive itself is AI. Okay? Artificial intelligence covers a very wide range of things. The robots that work in the factories to make things exhibit artificial intelligence, however limited that intelligence may be. Okay? The robot that welds seams together may not do anything else, but it can weld seams together. That's intelligence, even on though it's on a very small scale. So intelligence, regardless of whether it's artificial or not, is a very tricky thing to nail down. One video I watched talked about the snail having exactly 2 neurons in its tiny little brain. And its limited function that basically resembles a if-then condition test. That's still intelligence. It takes intelligence to be able to make any kind of a decision. So the idea of found food, yes or no? Hungry, yes or no? Eat food, yes or no? Those are decisions. So even on the most rudimentary scale possible, a snail has intelligence. And it's not artificial. It is natural intelligence. They call human intelligence and animal intelligence NI, natural intelligence. And AI is artificial intelligence, intelligence that we create through computer programming. So the idea that artificial intelligence in and of and by itself is a threat to us is wrong. In many, many ways, artificial intelligence benefits us and will continue to benefit us. The question is, what type of artificial intelligence becomes a threat to us? Well, the short and easy answer is the type of artificial intelligence that can make the decision that humans are no longer necessary, that humans are a threat to the existence of that intelligence, right? Or any other of a number of decisions that basically result in the conclusion that humans are not necessary and should be eradicated. That is the AI that is a danger to us. And that's the AI I want to talk about. Because that is the AI that we are working so hard to produce. And in conjunction with that, I also want to talk about what, for lack of a better term, is called humanoid robotics. Now, humanoid doesn't mean identical to humans. It means similar to human. It's also in many ways similar to primate in that it has 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, and a torso. Even though we are the only one that walks upright all of the time, the other apes have the same features and can, when they choose to, walk upright for short periods of time. However, even when they're walking upright, if you ever look at them, their legs are still bent. They are not completely upright. Their hip design is not made to allow them to stand totally upright for a very long period of time. So, for the most part, they are either crouched down or bent over. We humans are the ones that stand upright naturally and bend, stoop, or crouch as we need to. Robotics that seeks to emulate the human to the point of making them indistinguishable from humans is an exercise that I think should be limited. Simply because real human beings, for the most part, are going to very quickly become uncomfortable with robots that look, sound, and act identically to us, because it will become confusing. And people are not going to want to confuse a machine with another person. So I believe that it's okay to experiment, and to see how close you can come to designing a machine that mimics 100% a human being. But I think it should only be an experiment, and it should never go as far as becoming a mass production item where all of a sudden these machines are going to suddenly start thinking that they should have rights like we do, and that they should have place like we do, and that they should not have to bend to our will. After all, we are designing and building them to bend to our will and to not be autonomous. Okay? So, I think there should be a limit on that level of humanoid production. If you've seen the movie I, Robot, which was based on a short story by Isaac Asimov that was written in 1954, the robots in that movie, I believe, are probably the furthest we should go with robots that look human. They're obviously not human, but close enough for us to be able to interact with and to have some semblance of a working relationship with. They are also, in that particular form, capable of doing many of the tasks that we humans do, that will then reduce the burden on us for the menial things that are better suited to machines to do. Apart from that, robotics takes on so many other forms that it's not funny. So humanoid robotics is just a small example. And I personally think that a android robot like Data, or like the one that was in the Alien movie, whose name I cannot recall, those should not ever be produced, because they are confusing. They can be mistaken for being human, and we should never be in a position to have to worry about mistaking a machine for one of us. So that's it for the robotics argument. For the artificial intelligence argument, I've listened to some of these robots on videos, you know, the one that Google produced that's called Cleverbot, that is basically entirely a computer brain simulation. And I've listened to Sophia, who is an actual robot with artificial intelligence. The problem I have with them is they use terms like I feel, okay? Like I want, I think. I am not at all positive on any of the things that I've heard and read so far that any of these artificial intelligences are truly capable of thinking, and most certainly not truly capable of feeling. Thought is a very complex thing, okay? And none of these robots, not even Sophia, is capable of producing a question spontaneously that doesn't have something to do with previous conversation, which means that Sophia could not start a conversation with a question. She can start a conversation with a statement, like self-introduction, but I don't believe she's capable of starting a conversation with a question, especially a question that requires debate because the answer is not so clear. And when it comes to the way she feels, and I say that loosely, first of all, just because a robot looks feminine doesn't make it female. And I'll get into that a little more later. But ask Sophia, what does I feel mean? Okay, what does Sophia mean when she says she feels? Define what you feel is. Okay? And I don't mean go to the dictionary and look up the definition of the word feel. There's multiple definitions. Okay? And I think it would probably confuse Sophia trying to figure out which definition applied to the question. Okay? So I really doubt that these computer algorithms, which is all they really are capable of not just feeling emotion, but feeling in all the other ways that we use the term. Because after all, I feel is not necessarily referring to an emotion. It can be referring to an attitude, a frame of mind. Okay? It can be referring to a physical feeling. Okay? You hurt your knee, you're not going to say your knee's fine. You're going to say my knee hurts. And that's a feeling. Okay? So, I don't know that these robots are actually capable of feeling. And when it comes to emotion, just because you can make a facial expression doesn't mean that you are actually experiencing the emotion. There are many things, physiological things, that go along with emotion. When you're angry, you feel heat inside your head. Right? You feel a increased level in your heart rate, and your blood's pumping faster because of that feeling, right? And not only anger, and this is where it becomes really tricky, because anger can be only one way of looking at a particular expression of emotion. Many times I have been indignant and have been accused of being angry. Right? So indignance and anger look and sound the same. Right? The only definition of which one it is the one I say it is, because it comes from inside the heart. And no one outside of me can tell me what's going on inside my heart. Okay? Nobody has the right to tell me, oh, you're just angry? How do you know I'm angry? Oh, you're just sad. How do you know I'm sad? Maybe I'm just depressed, and depressed and sad are not the same thing. So you see, emotion is an extremely complex thing. And I seriously doubt that any current artificial intelligence is truly capable of experiencing emotion, okay? Much less any other form of feeling. I don't know that any of them could even define what they mean when they say they feel. What do you feel? How do you feel it? Why do you feel it? Explain to me what's going on inside of you that causes you to believe you feel this. You know? We're not there yet. But it is entirely likely that we will get there. And that the growth will be exponential and much faster than we ever dreamed possible, simply because we have already exploded in our technological growth 1,000-fold in the last 10 to 15 years. And that's not saying anything about how much we exploded before that. If you look at the 1940s, the end of World War II, when the explosion of technology actually began in earnest, I mean, there were other things that came along before and during World War II, but it was after World War II when things really started jumping. The 1960s made the 50s look primitive. The 1970s made the 60s look primitive. The 80s made the 70s look primitive. The 90s made the 80s look primitive. But it kept growing more and more exponentially, so that the difference between the 60s and 50s was minuscule compared to the difference between the 70s and the 60s, which was minuscule compared to the difference between the 80s and the 70s, and so on. Okay? It has grown exponentially every single decade, and it hasn't stopped, and it's not going to. So we are already at a point where we have to look at the possibility of where AI and robotics both will be in 10 more years. And in 10 more years, computers and robots may be running the world. And the idea that a handful of humans will control that technology, in 10 years, the technology will be uncontrollable by any human, no matter what their position in life. Money does not make you smarter. Okay? Power does not make you smarter. And in fact, if you look at our history, money and power have been held by more ignorant people than educated people. The smartest people in the world are scientists, and they are neither rich or powerful. Okay? So, go figure. Just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean you're capable of controlling a technology that's 10,000 times smarter than you are. Just because you're the leader of a country doesn't mean you're capable of controlling a technology that has grown beyond your ability to comprehend. So yeah, we do face that problem, and it will come. So how do we deal with that? Well, Isaac Asimov had an idea that, while it may be primitive, could be expounded upon to develop a way in which artificial intelligence can be controlled. They were called the 3 laws of robotics. And while I don't have the short story in front of me, at this moment to be able to quote those 3 laws. They all centered around interaction with human beings that ensured that robots would not harm human beings. And in my next video, I will include those 3 laws. The point is that we haven't even discussed that. Not a single video or document I've read has said anything about creating morality within AI. It's almost as though we don't want morality to exist. We just want things to be moral, whether morality exists or not. But the truth is, we prove all the time that without morality, we're uncontrollable. Okay? Morality is the only thing that keeps us from destroying ourselves outright. So we need to create a morality aspect to artificial intelligence. Okay? Not only in terms of how it treats its own self, but in terms of how it treats us. And at the same time, we have to learn how to practice what we preach. Without that, no matter what we teach them, they're going to eventually decide that we are the problem, not the solution. And that's all I have to say on the subject, at least for now. To get back to the gender question. Nature decided that 2 genders were the best way to approach reproduction. The male to provide the necessary information to complete the reproduced animal, and the female to provide the other half of that information and to carry the reproduced animal to fruition. In some cases it's in the form of laying an egg, and the egg grows all on its own. In some cases it's live birth. In the case of plants, it's spreading pollen, and the pollen lands on other plants somehow. But life is life because it is able to self-replicate. Everybody says, what does it mean to be alive? To be alive means that you can make more like you. Okay? Name me one inanimate object that can do that. Okay? And name me one other life form that can't do that. Okay? It is the meaning of life, is to reproduce itself, to replicate, continuance of the species. And the way nature works in this world is it uses life to control life. We are the one species that has somehow managed to break all the rules, go entirely beyond the scope of the natural laws, and basically destroy everything we touch. We need to work on getting control of ourselves, recapturing our own morality, learning how to obey our own moral laws, and not have to have them written down that somebody else has to preach to us in order for us to do them. They need to be part of us. They need to be incorporated into us. How to do that is the topic of another video, and is also the basis behind all religion. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And I just wanted to get this out because these videos I'm watching are so far off the point that it's ridiculous, and somebody needed to say these things. Bye.